Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2024 Senate elections, and I'll be giving my updated prediction for these races. Obviously, it's been maybe a month or two since I last did this, so there are going to be some changes, but it's still 2023, as I like to say. We're over a year out, so the map right now is going to look a lot different from what the map's going to look like when we get closer to the election, and so even though it's always good to do updates on this, it's why I'm doing it today. Maps a year out are not often the best indicator of who's favored to win. So this is my current prediction. I'm going to start by filling out the safe Democratic states. And these are states that, again, you'd expect Democrats to win by 12 to 15% or more. Again, some people like to have a very specific criteria for our safe states, right? Like it's like, oh, well, if they win by more than 10%, it's safe, or more than 15%, it's safe. I kind of don't like to do that because safe, likely, lean, tilt, those are margin terms, right? Or those are probability terms, not margin terms, right? Like safe means you're guaranteed to win, likely means you're likely to win, lean means you're leaning towards a victory, tilt means, the race is tilting in your favor, but it's a close race, right? It's not a margin thing. And so I more do my characterizations of these races by probability, and even though margin and probability are often intertwined, right? Like if you win a race by 25, you are always likely, you're always safe to win it. If you win a race by 0.25, it's obviously a very close race with close probabilities prior to the election. But that's kind of just my brief explanation for my margins. I don't have a specific criteria, even though often the states that I'll characterize as safe are going to be won by upwards of 12 to 15%. So Democrats are at 40. Republicans, they're going to get ahead of Democrats here because, as you can see, even when you fill out the safe Democratic states, they're nowhere near a majority because Republicans start out with so many more on this map because so many more Democratic seats are up for election than Republican seats. There's more defending that Democrats have to do. But either way, this map, like I said, very favorable to Republicans. I am going to give West Virginia safe for Republicans. It's a pickup. I don't usually like to do that, but Joe Manchin there's no way he wins re-election. He will outperform Joe Biden by a good amount, but he will still lose decisively. I'm confident in that. Trump's going to win West Virginia by maybe 42, 43 points next year, and Manchin won by 3% in 2018, which was a blue wave without a presidential election. Unless 2024 is a massive blue wave and polarization goes down, I don't think Manchin has a path to victory. So this is a safe Republican seat. And the rest of these states are to some degree competitive, but some of them obviously are really close. Others are not really within play. And a good place to start when we're talking about seats that aren't really in play for the other party: New Mexico and Virginia. These are two states. We'll add Maine. These are three states that are very likely to vote for Democrats. I think that they're a bit less likely than your New Yorks and Californias of the world, but they will be solid in margin. In New Mexico, Democrats have an incumbent there who won by over 20 points last time. In Virginia, Tim Kaine won by 17 last time. And in Maine, Angus King won easily, I think 24 points last time. And so in Maine and New Mexico specifically, I think the margins go down a little bit, but not by enough to warrant any characterization that relates to a close race. Now, the final likely state is Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania is obviously a bit closer than these three because Republicans do have a candidate, Dave McCormick, and the advantage to running McCormick in a state like Pennsylvania is that he can self-fund. He's wealthy. I think he's a businessman. He's kind of an outsider. But Republicans like him as a candidate because he's running in a state that they probably won't win. But in order to make it competitive, they won't have to invest their own money because McCormick will spend his money, and he won't need as much support as a less wealthy state legislator they're running in another state. So that's a benefit for Republicans. The problem, though, is that Dave McCormick, aside from that, does not really have a lot to offer. He's from Connecticut, so that's 2024 will be the second time in a row Republicans run someone from out of state in a Senate race in Pennsylvania, and that's not a good look for them because in 2022 it did not end well. In 2024, they're running not only someone from even further away. Connecticut doesn't even border Pennsylvania. At least New Jersey, at least you can drive in from it without crossing through any other states, but McCormick will have to run against an incumbent popular senator in Bob Casey, who is way more well-known across Pennsylvania than John Fetterman was in 2022. So I think that this is a likely Democratic race. It's going to be closer than Virginia or Maine or New Mexico, but I still think Casey wins by 5 or 6, maybe 7 points. So Democrats up to 44. Republicans, though, they're going to get really close here. I'm going to give them Florida, and that is a state that gets them up to 49. Democrats have a good candidate there, Debbie Muckersel Powell. I think is probably one of the best recruits they could have gotten. She won a congressional seat in 2018, lost in 2020, but outperformed Joe Biden. And obviously that was a Trump district that she lost re-election in. So she's won before in South Florida, which is a really important part of the state for Democrats. It's an area they're losing ground in very quickly. So I'm going to argue that even though Powell's a good candidate, I don't think she can come close to winning. Rick Scott, not necessarily the best incumbent, but Trump will win Florida by probably 10%, maybe 8%. But either way, Florida is a red state, and I don't think Democrats have the infrastructure yet to flip it. So 49 for Republicans. Democrats, I'm going to give them their lean states now. I think they're going to win Wisconsin and Michigan by lean margins. Wisconsin, to me, is interesting because Republicans, I have no idea who they're going to run. Neither Tom Tiffany nor Mike Gallagher, who are the two best candidates for the GOP congressmen from the northern part of the state who both outperformed in 2022, are both pretty well respected within the state. They did not want to run. And so Republicans are either going to run a random guy we don't know about yet, or David Clark, who I believe is the sheriff of Milwaukee County, or former rather. And he ran as a Democrat, but he endorsed Trump, and he's embraced the conspiracy theories about the 2020 election, which are not true. And so obviously election denialism is toxic in swing states, and I think Wisconsin, which was pretty good for Democrats in 2022 broadly, not going to be very receptive to that. So if he's the nominee, I think it's borderline likely for Tammy Baldwin. Either way, though, I don't think Republicans are really going to flip this seat. Baldwin's a popular incumbent. She won by 11 points last time. She'll win by less this time, but it won't be very close. I think Michigan's the closest Rust Belt state, obviously aside from Ohio. And Michigan, likely to be Elissa Slotkin as the nominee for Democrats. She's the congresswoman from the 7th district. And she's a good candidate. Again, she's controversial. I know a lot of people really don't like her because she's kind of a centrist Democrat. But I think she's a good candidate. She outperformed Biden. She won a Trump seat in 2018 and 2020, got redrawn into a bluer seat, won by 6%, and a Biden plus 1 seat. So she outperformed Biden. She underperformed Gretchen Whitmer by a little bit. But I would think by all objective measures, 2022 is a good performance for her. And Republicans, I think, are likely to run James Craig, who is the former police chief of Detroit. On paper, he's a good candidate. Coming from a blue area, I think could help him win over Democrats. He's more moderate. I remember back in 2021, he ran for governor and didn't even make it on the ballot for the primary because he had a problem with the signatures. He got on the petition, but I remember looking at him thinking he was a good candidate to maybe make a competitive race with Gretchen Whitmer. Obviously, Democrats did not have to face him, but if he's the nominee in the Senate race, I think that could be a close race. I think Republicans are also interested in some more out-of-state, moderate, candidates, but there hasn't really been anything specific there just yet. Either way, though, I think the state stays blue, even though it could be a close race, and I think Democrats should invest here because it's an open seat and because, obviously, Slotkin is not the ideal candidate, even if I do think that she has things that Democrats should like about her. So now our final lean D state, it's going to be Arizona. Arizona, I was originally very skeptical of chances for Democrats in, but the polling has shown that Kyrsten Sinema running as an independent would actually hurt Republicans more than Democrats. And Republicans are likely to run Carrie Lake or Blake Masters, both of whom are bad candidates. I think we all know who they are. I think we all know why they're bad candidates. Both lost in 2022. Both are election deniers. Both are very, very right-wing. I think Ruben Gallego is a bit worse than Mark Kelly because he's less moderate and he's not an incumbent senator. But I still think he'll get the job done with Biden on the ballot, win by 2 or 3 points. So those are our lean Democratic states. Time for lean Republican states. I'm going to give them 2 right here: Montana and Texas. So these 2 states are lean Republican for different reasons. Montana, I'll start out with, I think it's a bit less competitive. Jon Tester's a good incumbent. I really, really think Democrats have gotten very lucky with him here in the past, but it's not going to happen again. Trump is going to win the state by 15. Tester only outperformed, right? Jon Tester wins red states like Montana consistently. He won in 06, won in 12, won in 18. I get that. The problem for him is that in 2018, he ran in a blue wave environment without a presidential election on the ballot, and the Democrats came within 7% of winning the congressional race. So Tester, the generic ballot Montana, he outperformed by 10. It'll probably be Trump plus 15 in 2020, so if he does that again, he'll only win by 5. And that was in a blue wave environment, less polarized. I think he's popular. I think a lot of Republicans still like him. I don't think they're going to vote for him. I think he loses by 4 or 5 points. I think Democrats are going to really just be pretty heartbroken because this is a seat they've held for a very long time. It's historically, Montana's historically liked to elect Democrats to the Senate. I think 2024 is the year that trend comes to an end. Tester's not dead yet, but I think he's very, very, vulnerable. And no matter what Republicans do, I think they're going to be favored to win this race in such a red state. Now, Texas. Texas is a lot bluer than Montana. I think Trump wins it by under 4% in 2024. But Republicans have an incumbent. And in Senate races, Texas is still pretty red. In fact, in 2020, which was the last time these states had Senate races up, we saw Democrats actually run about even in Texas and Montana. Even though in Montana they were running a popular governor who is, predicted by many to win, and in Texas they're running I think a state senator against a popular incumbent Republican. So the fact those races were almost the same shows a lot. It says a lot about the state of these states politically. And then in 2018, Democrats won a Senate race in Montana. They lost Texas, but in Texas, they actually outperformed by more compared to the previous election. So I think Texas could be closer than Montana in these Senate races. Colin Allred is likely to be the Democratic nominee. He's a good candidate, and I think he'll raise a lot of money against Ted Cruz. I don't think it'll be enough to win, but I think he'll do really well in areas like Dallas, Fort Worth. He'll improve in Austin and San Antonio, which are growing kind of tech areas with a lot of educated voters coming in. And he might not do as well in Houston, which is, I think, a problem for Democrats, but he'll still come close. I still think he outperforms Biden by a marginal amount, and I think Ted Cruz is in another close race, even though he will likely win. So that leaves two states. These are our two core toss-ups. I'm going to give Democrats Nevada, and I'm going to give Republicans Ohio. Nevada, to me, is a bit less competitive than Ohio. It's still very close. It's still a tilt state, but at this point in time, I will say that Jackie Rosen will probably win. Republicans are running Sam Brown, or they'll likely run Sam Brown. He's a fine candidate, nothing special, nothing horrible, but Rosen's a good incumbent, and Nevada likes to, narrowly elect Democrats. In 2022, Republicans had they had every turnout advantage possible, and they still fell short. I think if they lost in 2022, golden opportunity, I think they'd lose again in 2024, probably by a little bit more. Now, Ohio is a really, really interesting race because, unlike Montana, I think Democrats are actually polling well here. Sherrod Brown is led by good amounts in every poll. I think Republicans are likely to run Bernie Moreno, who's their worst candidate, and this ties back into the problem Republicans have fundamentally, which is their voters keep nominating unelectable candidates, right? Like Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania, Tudor Dixon in Michigan, Blake Masters in Arizona. They have good options, right? Like Pennsylvania, they had Lou Barletta, or even, Dave White. In Arizona, they had Mark Brnovich, who won a statewide race in 2018. And, in the Wisconsin governor race, they had the former lieutenant governor. They have a lot of good candidates that they just can't win in primaries because the GOP electorate likes very, very right-wing politics. And in Ohio, if they nominate Bernie Moreno, it's going to be a close race, closer than it should be, because they have Frank LaRose and they have Matt Dolan. I think Dolan would do really well against Sherrod Brown, but Dolan's too moderate, and Frank LaRose has lost a lot of steam over the summer. So I'm going to say it's early, but I think Moreno wins the primary, and I think he beats Brown by a lot less than people are going to expect. Brown's a good incumbent. He's been winning every year since 2006, kind of like John Tester. But unlike Tester, he actually won on the same ballot in 2018 as a Republican overperformance. Tester won because, he won in part because Democrats held their, they held their own in the House race in 2018. In 2018 in Ohio, Democrats lost the governorship, and that was a pretty shocking result in and of itself, but they won the Senate race by 7%. So I think Sherrod Brown is a bit stronger than John Tester. His approvals are good, and Republicans are a bit less, fundamentally built in Ohio. And what I mean by that is in Montana, Trump's going to win by 15. In Ohio, Trump could win by 9. He could also win by 6. So I think that Brown has less ground to make up than Tester does, and for that reason, he's in a closer race. I still think he loses at the end of the day, but by no means would I be shocked if he holds on. So that's my prediction: 52 GOP seats, 48 Democratic seats. Again, let me know what you think, and I'll see you all in the next one.